Hello there and welcome to Spiritual How-Tos. I'm Debbie Cheney and I want to thank you again for clicking in today. Thanks for sharing the word and even hitting that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, we'd appreciate you coming back again and again. And thanks again for today. Hey, question for you. When was the last time you said no to something that you wanted? When was the last time you denied yourself? We live in a must-have world, don't we? We just got to have this unlimited streaming and unlimited pictures and unlimited contacts, and we have same-day shopping, and we have same-day delivery, and we have snacks anytime we want them, and we have fast mobile pretty much anywhere in the world. We can get anything we want delivered to our doorstep. We can shop in bulk, and we can even upgrade and increase our limits anytime we want. More, indulge, enjoy, repeat. It's kind of our world, isn't it? And sometimes we often even hear that little voice inside of our head that tells us we deserve everything we want. I know I battle that frequently. But I'd like to suggest, my friend, that having more does not make us happier. In fact, there's a Dr. Alan McConnell. He's a psychologist, and he says this: as people grow accustomed to material goods, they often experience hedonistic adaptation and are less inclined to savor daily pleasures. Wow! He even goes on to say that intentionally withholding access to pleasurable things would boost savoring our daily pleasures. So if we kind of denied ourselves and if we withheld ourselves from pleasurable things occasionally, we would enjoy our daily pleasures more often, he says. In fact, he went on to develop a study, and his thesis was this: could self-denial increase happiness? So what he did is he gathered together a group of 55 undergraduate students, and it really is a fun study to read. You can read about it online. I read the whole thing. It's very interesting to read, but I'll just give you the conclusion, because at the end, he says this: the restricted access participants had to chocolate, which was what his test was, those restricted access participants were happier than the members of the other two groups who received the chocolate. So chocolate denying was the test. And his conclusion was if you restricted their access to chocolate, that group was the one who was happier than the other two. So when he published it in his Quanback-Dunn study, he really did demonstrate that self-denial makes people happier, in part because they learn to savor more and to look forward to it. Oh my gosh, I loved that study when I read it a couple of years back, and I love it today because it explains exactly what I wrestle with. But it got me thinking again, as I have been. When was the last time I actually denied myself something that I really wanted and something that I really didn't need? Serious, how about you? How about you? I'd like for us to consider that perhaps self-denial would increase our happiness. Perhaps. See, self-denial is really fasting. It's going without, right? It's going without. And I know fasting is a trendy fad today, intermittent fasting. But I want to suggest to you, as you probably are aware, that fasting is a spiritual discipline. It really is. And fasting in the biblical sense actually means to abstain from food. That means to not eat food. And the purpose for biblical fasting, of course, is to deny ourselves so that we can gain a bigger, broader, more powerful picture of our world and the spiritual goals that we want to set for ourselves in that world. So that's biblical fasting. Now, I want us to look at a text in Matthew, as we have been, but I want to first point out, as we go to the ancient writings, in the New Testament, fasting was a common practice. It was common. And again, on the notes, which you can click on and download, on the notes we read several Bible verses. One of them tells us that the Pharisees fasted 2 times a week. Twice a week, every week, all their whole life, they fasted 2 days a week. It was common practice. John the Baptist's disciples, remember, they fasted because Jesus' disciples came to him and said, hey, how come your guys don't fast? John's fast. And Jesus answered. So John's disciples fasted. They went without food. And then we have another picture in the Gospels of Anna, who was a priestess in the temple. And it says she worshiped and fasted in the temple. So fasting was a common practice. That's probably why Jesus said again in Matthew chapter 6, he said, when you fast. Because it seemed to be a given in the New Testament time that people were going to fast. They were really going to fast. And just like we saw with prayer and with giving, Jesus stresses not the fasting itself, but the motivation for the fasting. He says in Matthew 6:16, he says, when you fast, don't be a hypocrite and don't do it to be seen by others, because you'll only gain others' praise if you do that. Because we want to be fasting to be seen by him, right? If we're seen by him, we'll get our reward. If we're seen by others, we'll get our reward from them. And if we're just fasting to lose weight, then that's our reward, is losing weight. Intermittent fasting. But let's look closely at the Bible text in Matthew 6:16 to 18. And I'm going to read from the Message. It says this. When you practice some appetite-denying discipline to better concentrate on God, don't make a production out of it. It might turn you into a small-time celebrity, but it won't make you a saint. If you go into training inwardly, act normally outwardly. Shampoo, comb your hair, brush your teeth, wash your face. God doesn't require attention-getting devices. He won't, however, overlook what you are doing. He will reward you. I love that version. I love that Message translation. Let's take a couple of notices in this context for our topic of fasting today. Number 1 to look at is that very first phrase where it says, when you practice some appetite-denying discipline. Wow, isn't that power-packed? It seems to indicate, doesn't it, that practicing fasting is gonna be some sort of regular activity. Practicing. When you practice. In other words, it's going to be something that's going to be regular, something you're going to do on some sort of regular schedule because you are practicing. When you practice some appetite-denying discipline, you're going to deny your appetites, your physical appetites, your emotional appetites. You're going to deny those physical appetites. So it's a practice. Next, he says the reason should be to better concentrate on God. Oh my goodness, that's the whole reason for going without food, is to better concentrate on God. Going without our natural cravings so that we can say yes to God. We can tell him, I need you, God. I crave you, God. I'm going to go without food for this day because I want to feed myself on you. And the whole time we're doing that, our stomach is growling and screaming out to us, and yet we're not paying attention to it. We're not paying attention when our stomach's yelling, because we're saying no to our needs, and we're getting in tune with his desires. What God wants. We're feeding on God. We're tasting on his food. We're feeding our spirit and denying our flesh. John said in John 3:30, he said, remember, I must decrease and he must increase. So when I go without food, I am decreasing so that God in me can increase. Jesus himself said, remember, you're not supposed to live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So we don't just live by what we eat. We live on the Word of God. We live on God himself. It's kind of like the principle we talked about last week too, when we talked about closing the door on distractions. Because when we choose to close the door to our desires and say no to ourselves and pray and seek God and read the Word instead, we're closing the door on our physical appetites. They're going to yell and scream at us, but we're still closing our door so we can focus on God. Another phrase that stands out in that Matthew 6 from the Message, it says, don't make a production out of it. See, this is what the New Testament Christians did. They made a big deal out of what they were doing. Let's face it, if you fast for any extended period of time, you're going to feel tired. You're going to be less energy. You're going to have less energy than what you have. And quite often, you're going to have a pounding headache. At least I do when I'm going without my coffee the first couple of days. It's like, oh my gosh, that's the hardest part for me. And your energy is low, your headache's pounding. But he says, don't make a big deal about it. It is what it is, but nobody else needs to know that. They don't need to know that. Don't make a production out of it. Don't say, oh, I'm fasting today, so I really can't do that. No, that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to keep it to ourselves. Because it's an inward training. So we need to keep it inward. We need to keep it private and act totally normally outwardly. Last point from Matthew is this. He tells us to anoint our head. Anoint our head when we fast. Well, let's be honest. Not a lot of people anoint their heads today. They just don't do it. And what it really means is to put oil, which is a fragrant oil, on your forehead as a sign that you are dedicating your brain, your thoughts, your ideas, you are dedicating your focus to seeking God. It would look sort of like putting a little bit of olive oil on your finger and then putting it on your head. That's kind of really what it would look like in modern day life. I think of that because there's often that I use my essential oils, and I'll get a roller bottle, and I'll mix essential oils with olive oil, and I'll use the roller ball to anoint my head or to anoint someone else's head for healing or prayer. That's what it means to anoint. You just say, I'm dedicating. Now, maybe you don't have oil, don't go into the oil. Well, the same thing can be accomplished by simply saying a prayer that says something like, God, I'm just dedicating my mind to you. I'm dedicating my thoughts to you. I'm dedicating this prayer time, my emotions. I'm dedicating my senses to you, God. I am just all in for you. I am submitting my thoughts to you because I want to gain your thoughts. So anoint your head when you pray. Set yourself apart to seeking God and fasting. And number 2, then, he says, wash your face. Wash your face. I think that represents the cleansing part of fasting. Wash your face in the Greek actually means it could be your hands, your face, or your feet, your head, or your hands. And so we're actually taking the time where we deal with our own personal sins. We deal with our own personal character flaws. We deal with our own ideas that are not God's ideas. And this is where, to be honest, in prayer and fasting, we're cleaning up our act. I am cleaning up my act in fasting and prayer. It's where I deal with my issues that I have with other people. I deal with that in prayer. It's where I repent and I get rid of everything that's not pleasing to the Lord and I get right with God. That's what it means to wash my face, to get myself right before God. When that happens, when that personal level of washing happens, it is from that place then, from that place of repentance, then that we can begin to pray for others, pray for family members, pray for our neighborhoods, and pray for our nations. But the washing starts with us, and then we can pray and lift up others. Now, in Mark chapter 9, verse 29, Jesus said that Fasting is required even to cast out or to evict evil spirits. So to move in a greater power in the Holy Spirit requires fasting and prayer too, if we look at the Bible. So once we get ourselves cleaned up, then God can fill us with clean water that will flow through a clean vessel. Now, in Mark chapter 2, verses 18 to 22, Jesus gives us what I believe are two more reasons that we can fast and that we can pray. Fasting. The disciples came to him and said, how come your disciples aren't fasting? And Jesus gave the analogy about putting a new patch on an old garment. And then he gave the analogy of putting new wine in an old wineskin. Well, I think those two things are actually telling us two reasons we can fast and when we should fast. And I think the first one, which has to do with patching or covering a hole, I think that is for protection. I think I could suggest that we can pray for protection. When there's been a wound, when there's been a hole, when there's been a tearing apart, then we can pray and fast and ask God to cover that, to heal that, to mend that, to do what is needed in that tearing apart that old thing into making it new and allowing it to heal. And then the second part was for new wine and new wineskins. That kind of is obvious. I think we fast when it is that we want something new and fresh from God. When we want a new infilling, we want new repentance, we want new insight, new revelation, new direction. Maybe we need direction. Maybe we want to be gone with the old and be filled with his new things. So we as a vessel want to be new, and we want to receive what God is doing as new. That is the new wine. That is making our fabrics match, the wineskin and the wine matching, and making the patch and the garment match. I think fasting is about having our fabric, my fabric, match with the godly kingdom fabric. Last thing before I close is I just want to also insert that fasting is connected with worship. Worship and fasting are inexorably connected. And you can see that in Luke 3 and in Acts 13. Where they were fasting, they were worshiping. And where they're worshiping, they're fasting. That means we're really just praising God, exalting him, and going without food at the same time. Well, as I wrap this up, could it be, my friend, could it be that God knew the benefits to us, both physically and spiritually, when we choose to fast? Duh, right? Could it be that he really did know that self-denial would increase our happiness? Could it be that God knew the value of going without food would sharpen our focus on spiritual needs? I think it could be, right? You can fast, my friend. You can. You can fast a meal. You could fast 2 meals. You could fast 3 meals. Maybe a day, maybe even 3 days. Heck, you could fast a week. You could fast 21 days. You could fast 40 days. You could. But I could never fast 40 days. Yeah, you could. It is humanly possible. But remember, fasting is a practice. It's a practice. It's something we do intentionally and regularly. But we also grow in it. We grow in our fasting. The first time I fasted as a teenager, I fasted TV. That's what I fasted. Nowadays, I can fast food, I can fast whatever. But it's something we grow in. We get better and we get deeper in. But we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. And the reason we choose to fast is to focus on God, to ask him for help, and to change our focus to him. And so when we go without food, in the place of that eating, in the place of that food, we read the Bible and we pray. So rather than having dinner, I'm going to spend that time in prayer. and seeking Him. Rather than having lunch, I'm going to spend that time in prayer and seeking Him. And in that process, I'm anointing my head. Remember, I'm dedicating my mind to Him to seek His thoughts. And remember, I'm cleaning up my spiritual act. I'm getting my life straight with God as I ask Him to cover me and infill me and give me new direction and new wine. I promise you, my friend, I promise you that learning to fast and seek God will deepen your relationship with Him. You can fast. Lord, bless them today. Help them to make a decision to go deeper into you, I ask. In your wonderful name, Jesus. Amen. Thanks again. See you next time.